Welcome to Ocean 7 and welcome to this edition of Law Focus with Nathan Prescott. Now let's meet Mr. Nathan Prescott.
Meet once again.
Nathan, good to see you again.
Hey, it's good to see you, Edward. So we're here on Wednesday, live from Ocean Springs.
We're live again.
Live from Ocean Springs. It's Law Focus. We've been very proud to put out a few episodes, 5 or 6 episodes in the last couple of weeks. But because we put out so many episodes recently, we can do stuff that's sort of fresh, right?
Right.
And one of the fresh things that's out there and people have been asking about is pretty simply the defamation trial with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It's very interesting. So what I thought we would do today is, because it's been demanded popularly, is just sort of address that in the context of the law that maybe governs our state, Mississippi, governs other states, and governs our nation nationally. So it's very interesting, right? So let's get through it. I know y'all have heard a lot about it, but maybe you haven't heard all about it from my perspective, right? It all started, this recent trial, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp were married, right? After their marriage, the marriage lasted, I think, from 2015 to 2016. And after the marriage, Amber Heard filed for some kind of restraining order against Johnny Depp. Okay, so they were married, they filed for a restraining order, and it goes from there. I think that was in 2016 that they filed for that restraining order, okay? Subsequent to that, and this is where it becomes really interesting for a practitioner of the law, subsequent to that, the Sun in England, right, a newspaper in England called Johnny Depp a wife beater. Oh no. So Johnny Depp then sues the Sun, okay? And he sues the Sun. And why is that interesting to me? Well, it's interesting to me, Edward, because the laws are different, right? Even though we've been through this long journey on Law Focus about where our laws come from, even though our laws do often emanate from the common law of England, the laws for libel, slander, and defamation, and just for a quick review, libel is in writing, slander is in speech, you know, a falsehood in speech, and ultimately defamation is the larger claim. So even though a lot of our laws emanate from merry old England, what happens is they differ a bit. And one of the laws that differs, and we'll get into that, is our laws for defamation. So the Depp camp sued the Sun, not the Sun Herald, sued the Sun for defamation, right? Ultimately, for calling him a wife beater. Ultimately, the trial was held. But in these kinds of cases in England, the Sun actually had to prove that it did not defame Johnny Depp. It wasn't on Johnny Depp to prove that he was defamed. It was the opposite, right? The Sun had to prove that it did not defame him. And ultimately, the court ruled that the Sun was not liable for calling Johnny Depp a wife beater. They had, I think, 13 or 14 incidents where they tried to unpack what happened. So this trial that we are currently experiencing, which has been going on since April, and now we're, you know, pretty deep into May, has sort of been tried before, or a lot of the content of it has been tried before in England, and during that period of time, the libel claim or the defamation claim did not result in liability to any of the parties. So that's interesting, right? We've got some background on that. So what makes it interesting to me is that we've got a distinction in the laws. So then what happens, right? Well, in 2018, there comes a time when the parties decide to write an article, right? And there's an article written in the Washington Post in 2018, and that article is relatively thin, right? That article doesn't do a whole lot, but it does allegedly, implicate Johnny Depp in a scheme, right? Amber Heard comes out and says some things. It's not a very long article. It never directly implicates Johnny Depp, and it never says Johnny Depp struck me. It says that Amber Heard was a victim of abuse. Now, why are we talking about that, right? So it's a 2018 article. The 2018 article is not written by the Washington Post or its journalists, right? The Sun article was written by the Sun. It headlined it wife beater. The 2018 article written by Amber Heard was an opinion piece, an op-ed, right, in the Washington Post. Well, that article sort of set fire. Amber Heard comes out, and then Johnny Depp says, well, that article defamed me, even though it didn't name him, and even though that previous Sun thing was out there. And then there was a lawsuit. Now, why was there a lawsuit, right? Well, there's a lawsuit in Virginia. And the reason it's in Virginia is because that is where the Washington Post is published, Okay, so it's my understanding that there's not a direct suit against the Washington Post because the Washington Post sought solace or sought comfort and insulation from possible libel because it just printed the opinion of someone else, right? The reason it's in Virginia as a choice of venue is because that's where it was published. So it's pretty interesting, right? So we've got this big celebrity trial out there, but the interesting thing to me is not so much the celebrity, but the chance that it allows us here at Law Focus to unpack the defamation laws in our nation, right? Which is so cool, right? Because what I want you to focus on throughout this conference is, what can we say? You know, we're always very careful, you know, in our communications. We want to say alleged, or we want to, you know, because we don't know a lot of things. And we talked last week about the good work being done by Mississippi Today and other newspapers, including the Sun Herald. There's been recently a case in the press about some crimes allegedly committed by a former officer of the city of Biloxi. The reporting in the Sun Herald on that has been excellent. I actually sat in on that trial yesterday, and Margaret Baker is there, and she is doing a great job. Sun Herald has got a photographer there, and has got a reporter that seems to be full-time there, and there's some other reporting out there. So I want you all, you know, we all talk, again, I did this last week, but I want to do it again. We all talk about like the end of newspapers, right? And you have mentioned the evolution of newspapers, right? We all talk about the end of newspapers or the end of this form of media or that form of media. One time a friend and I were talking, and he said, you know, Walmart, we were talking about how powerful Walmart was, and he said, this was years ago and I could never envision it. And he said, you know, it'll evolve, things evolve, like shopping evolves, capitalism evolves. And now we have Amazon, right? So things do evolve, and now Amazon, you know, Walmart tries to be like Amazon. So I think you made a great point, and it's actually a lot of the points we make on the show I get to reflect on during the week, but you made a great point. You said that the news is not dead, it just evolves, right? And how does it evolve? Well, so the Sun Herald, for instance, is there. They're making local news, but I've noticed also that in the Sun Herald each day online, they not only have our local news, but they have like an e-edition, which is really chock-a-block full of national news and international news. So, you know, people do different things. I think whereas the Sun Herald used to be a thicker paper locally and didn't have a lot of international news, now they're picking up internationally and aggregating. So we have to be mindful of how papers change. And why is that pertinent to this defamation communication? Well, because if the Sun Herald's out there right now reporting on a very touchy trial in the city of Biloxi, right? It's a molestation trial. They're going a very touchy trial in the city of Biloxi, and when they do something like that, you know, they have to type with soft fingers. I mean, you've been in journalism for a while. You know how it works, right?
Yep.
It's a serious thing, and
it's a serious thing, yeah.
And again, and then you know, you go to journalism school, and people go to J school, and they learn out how all that stuff operates. But one thing that they definitely learn who operates, and it's happening right now in the city of Biloxi, and it is being tried in Virginia, is these defamation laws that we're going to get into right after the break.
Okay, well, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with Law Focus after this.
Thank you.
Pendragon Apothecary, offering ancient medicines, herbal adaptogens to build immunity, and an array of mushroom powders and elixirs, and a complete line of CBD products, oils, teas, coffees, and gummies. 1016 Government Street, downtown Ocean Springs. Online, pendragonapothecary.com.
Want to know Jackson County's best kept secret? Escataba Supply. We stock over 79 sizes of air filters, including April Air replacement media. We carry Goodman air conditioning equipment and supplies, plus a large selection of appliance parts for washers, dryers, and stoves. Like our Facebook page for exclusive specials. Come see us at Escataba Supply, located 1 mile north of I-10 on Highway 63 in Moss Point.
Furniture Galore and More has been doing business on the coast in Biloxi for over 30 solid years. We provide quality furniture from our floor to your door. That means you can buy it today and take it away, or you can have it delivered. New living room furniture, bedrooms, comfortable leather recliners, and so much more for your home decor. So many selections, layaway and financing is available. Isn't it time to spruce things up? Furniture galore and more. Ain't nothing like it on the coast. Stop by and tell them Lexi and Nick sent you.
Adventures Pub and Spirits awarded locals' favorite hangout, best late-night eatery, and best bar on the coast, along with TripAdvisor's Hall of Fame, offering a large menu of traditional coast seafood favorites like fresh oysters, royal reds, seafood platters, po' boys, as well as wings, burgers, steaks, and much more. Stop by and join us for our $9.95 weekday lunch special. That's Adventures Pub and Spirits, located 1 block north of the Hard Rock Casino, downtown Biloxi.
Well, if you've got a TV antenna, or if you're on cable, or wherever you're at, if you're trying to watch Ocean 7, if you have any problems with that reception and you'd like to have a streaming app for Ocean 7, now we have one. It's called Local B TV. You can download it on your Apple phone or your Android phone or on Amazon Fire or any place where you can download an app. Local B TV, type in your zip code and you've got Ocean 7 wherever you're at. Now back to more Law Focus with Nathan Prescott.
Hey, Edward. So Edward was just talking about the evolution of trains to planes to electric cars. So we're keeping with evolution. But one thing that, you know, is sort of indicative of evolution. Used to be I had all this paper here and I could never access anything outside of the paper. But as I was looking for my information, I realized that I didn't print out the full opinion piece from the Washington Post. And one thing that we do as lawyers and we do as just members of the community is it's good to go back to the source material. So if you look online, right, there are thousands probably is not even an exaggeration, of memes and and words of commentary. Who's lying about who? How quirky is Johnny Depp? What did Amber Heard do? Have you seen this? Of course you've seen it.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
If you open your newspapers, if you open your phone, it's there. Like who did what to who?
Yep.
It's like this great thing. But why are we talking about it? Well, sure, there's celebrities, and we're interested in celebrities for whatever reason, but we're talking about it because there's a defamation suit, right? We wouldn't know any of these details but for the defamation suit. Well, where does the defamation suit arise from? And I question everybody out there who's interested in this thing, just take a few minutes and in Google, type in Amber Heard, Washington Post, op-ed, original. And then just Google it, right? So I'm just asking you to put on your legal caps for a little while, and instead of just understanding, you know, who did what to whom, who cut off whose finger, or who did what in the what bed, and who did cocaine, and who drank alcohol, let's just think about where this thing emanates from. I want everybody to focus on where this thing emanates from, and put your judge hat on for a second, and or your jury hat, and tell me, now that you've got context, what's going on. So here, there's an article. It was published on December the 18th, 2018. This is the wellspring from which all the inroads are made. And it's not inscrutable. It's not. It's right here in writing. This is it. Isn't that sort of cool? Mm-hmm. Isn't that sort of cool to get down to the source? Because we've got so much stuff swirling around, right? Mm-hmm. So many allegations. Oh, I like him, or I like her, or I don't like him, or I don't like her, or he didn't do that, or she didn't do that. But this is it. Opinion. Amber Heard. I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. This has to change. Okay? So we got to analyze that, right? And I think we ultimately learned that the American Civil Liberties Union helped write some of this stuff. But if you read this article, this is the article on December the 18th, 2018. I'm looking at it now. It never says Johnny Depp. Now, I think the courts will equate that this is Johnny Depp. She says, I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having to be told. I knew that men have the power physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. I knew this thing long before I had the words to articulate it, and I bet you learned it young too. Now, why is that interesting? Well, because there was a case in United States defamation law that says you can't have a wrong opinion, right? So part of her opinion was, I knew that men have the power physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. So I think there's some kind of defense pursuant to some of these cases online. If I come out to Edward and I say, hey, Edward, my name is Nathan Prescott, and it is my opinion that the sky is purple, right? Or it is my opinion that XYZ did XYZ. It's hard to it's hard to pin somebody on their opinion, right? It's hard to, it's hard. Defamation is hard to pin on an opinion. Another thing that's really interesting is there was this case called New York Times v. Sullivan, right? In 1964, there was this big groundbreaking case that changed the nature of libel laws, and it said if you're a public figure, people can talk smack about you and maybe even defame you as long as there was no actual malice. So you going out there and being the governor or being a public figure, they say essentially you've invited public scrutiny, and because you've invited public scrutiny, there's a higher standard to find defamation on your account, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a big case. Another big case out there was one of the first cases in American jurisprudence is the case of Zinger in 1734, and somebody was publishing, you know, not diatribes, but publishing criticism of a governor of New York, right, at that time, so whatever the governorship looked like at that time. And there was a suit on libel and defamation, and the court ultimately held that truth was a defense, right? So remember that a lot of things can be said in the United States, and truth is a defense. And why is that? And it goes back to our First Amendment rights, right? The freedom of speech and the freedom of press. So we can talk, and even if it's painful, if it's truthful, that is a defense of defamation. Now, you probably knew that, and the viewers probably knew that, but that's not always the case. There's certain things you can't say in other countries because they're not protected by the First Amendment. And even if they are truthful, you could get in trouble for them. Isn't that strange? I mean, that's something that we get to live within mm-hmm. that other nations and other people in other nations do not. So, excuse me for going off kilter for a little, but this is back, right? So she said, like many women, I had been harassed and sexually assaulted by the time I was of college age, but I kept quiet. I did not expect filing complaints to bring justice, and I did not see myself as a victim. Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Okay? Friends and advisors told me I would never again work as an actress, that I would be blacklisted. A movie I was attached to recast my role. I had just shot a 2-year campaign as the face of a global fashion brand, and the company dropped me. Questions arose as to whether I would be able to keep my role of Mira in the movies Justice League and Aquaman. Okay? I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Now she's saying again, this is what I saw, right? Imagine a powerful man is a ship like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes, not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend on the enterprise. In recent years, the Me Too movement has taught us about how power like this works, not just in Hollywood, but in all kinds of institutions, workplaces, places of worship, or simply in particular communities. In every walk of life, women are confronting these men who are buoyed by social, economic, and cultural power. And these institutions are beginning to change. There's not much more, but I do want to finish it because so much has been talked about. We are in a transformative political moment. The president of our country has been accused by more than a dozen women of sexual misconduct, including assault and harassment. Outrage over his statements and behavior have energized a female-led opposition. At Me Too started a conversation about just how profoundly sexual violence affects women in every area of our lives. And last month, more women were elected to Congress than ever in our history. Remember, this is in 2018, with a mandate to take women's issues seriously. Women's rage and determination to end sexual violence are turning into political force. We have an opening now to bolster and build institutions protective of women. For starters, Congress can reauthorize and strengthen the Violence Against Women Act, first passed in 1994. The act is one of the most effective pieces of legislation enacted to fight domestic violence. It creates support systems for people who report abuse and provides funding for rape crisis centers, assistance programs, and other critical services. It improves responses by law enforcement, and it prohibits discrimination. We could continue to fight sexual assault on college campuses while simultaneously insisting on fair processes for adjudicating complaints. I write this as a woman who had to change my phone number weekly because I was getting death threats. For months, I rarely left my apartment, and when I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles, and in cars. Tabloid outlets that posted pictures of me spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion, and my life and livelihood depended on myriad judgments from beyond my control. And last paragraph. I want to ensure that women who come forward to talk about violence receive more support. We are electing representatives who know how deeply we care about these issues. We can work together to demand changes to laws and rules and social norms, and to right the imbalances that have shaped our lives. Okay. I mean, did you hear Johnny Depp's name?
No, I didn't hear his name.
I didn't either. And nor did I hear, you know, Johnny Depp punched me in the face or Johnny Depp sexually assaulted me. Now, we might be able to imply that from some of those articles, but reading that article aloud, and you've never read it, right?
No, it's a pretty short article.
It's a pretty short article.
It really is.
And it never says Edward St. Pay did this to Nathan Prescott. And it never says Johnny Depp did this to me.
Right.
So not only does it not name him, right, guys? Now look, Edward, I wish you guys could see Edward right now, because he's saying there's a lot of stuff going on in the world and we're talking a lot about it, but I got to the article. That's the article.
That's the article.
And I'm glad that I could read it. I know that that was sort of laborious, but I wanted to accentuate and focus on just how short it really was.
Really short, yeah.
Right.
And they implied, I guess.
There was an implication.
Implication, but that was it, an implication.
But there was an implication of some kind of abuse, right? So let's think about that from a defamation perspective, right? There was an implication of some type of abuse, right? But there wasn't a direct accusation.
No.
He punched me in the eye, or he hit me with a bottle, or he choked me.
Right.
It was a implication of abuse. So let's think about that. So we've got a public figure who's got an actual malice standard. We got to show that, you know, she was out there to do this to hurt him, usually, in my analysis. You've got that, and you've got a big, powerful star. I wonder, Edward, like, you go through the social media feeds, right? There's a lot of press that's been written recently about how Johnny Depp's really cool and Amber Heard's a liar and a bad actress and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know, guys. I mean, you all can comment and think about it among yourselves, but is that not what she was sort of saying was going to happen? She said he had a lot more power than she did.
Right.
And he, you know, and
social media is kind of taking his side, I think.
Right, they're taking his side.
But the judge said that doesn't have any impact on it.
It doesn't have any impact, except for the 330 million Americans, or the billion people worldwide who are looking at it every day.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
So what happened in this case, right? He sued her for 50 million and she sued him for 100 million, right? He says that he can't be on Pirates of the Caribbean. She says that she lost a bunch of stuff. I don't know. You read that article, people, and it's just a Google search away. Washington Post op-ed. If you're interested in this case, I really advocate getting down to the source material. And you read that article, and it never names Johnny Depp. It never says Johnny Depp hit me. It's got some allusions to violence, to abuse. You know, I don't have it here before me, so remember to read it. But it's got some allusions, and then we're going to sue each other for $150 million.
When will we know? When is the judge going to rule?
You know, I don't know. So it won't be a judge. I think there's a jury in the box, right?
Oh, a jury.
I think so. You know, and we'll get through that, and then we'll see where it is. I mean, right now, this is just my impression, is you got a lot of tit for tat. I don't know if there's probably no such thing as equal mutual abuse. You know, somebody is generally the aggressor, but there could have been some mutual abuse, right? I think some of the testimony shows that there were two people that were fighting. It was a physical, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, just given what I know very limitedly, it seems like, you know, it was a pugnacious relationship. It was a relationship where they quarreled, right? And, you know, it might be the case that both of them sort of make allegations that could ultimately have that grand defense of truth in a defamation claim, right? So we got the First Amendment. The First Amendment says you got a freedom to talk, right? Then we've got these cases out there like John Peter Zinger and New York Times v. Sullivan, which say truth is the defense, right? And then we've got Sullivan, which says, hey, look, if you're a public figure, you got to bring it to actual malice. Do you remember, this is a funny case, but not funny, but interesting. There's Hustler v. Falwell. And in that case, I just want to go over this one, right? So the Hustler magazine, issued a parody, claiming that Jerry Falwell had engaged in an act with his mom, right? It's terrible. Just awful, really. You know, in terrible, poor taste. Remember Jerry Falwell?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a bad dude. I mean, he was a media scion. He published Hustler magazine, and he got sued all the time for First Amendment. But if you're out in the legal community, you learn pretty quickly that he was somebody that sort of challenged things in that community. So you got Hustler out there.
Larry Flint.
Larry Flint, I'm sorry. Falwell was Falwell's preacher.
He was a preacher.
Yeah, right, excuse me. So Larry Flint was out there. Larry Flint's Hustler, I'm sorry, and Falwell's. So you got that out there, and they're fighting. You like this case, I can tell.
I don't
it's
really
interesting,
remember.
but I want to tell you a little bit about. I want to tell you a little bit about it in the context of this.
It sounds funny just to hear this.
Yeah, there was a parody advertisement in Hustler magazine claiming that Jerry Falwell had engaged in an incestuous act with his mother in an outhouse. Okay, that's what happened. He put it in the magazine to challenge him, right? I'm just telling you what happened. That's something, right?
Yeah.
So Falwell's camp sues Hustler and says that's defamatory. You can't do that, right? It's a total clear lie. Now, I'm telling you, I don't know where the Supreme Court would follow on this now, and hopefully stare decisis. Remember, stare decisis is let the decision stand. If the Supreme Court makes a decision, they're supposed to always honor that decision because of judicial precedent, right? Now, that's being challenged a bit recently with Roe v. Wade and some other cases, but for a different show, right? So in 1988, Hustler magazine v. Falwell sues Hustler for this outhouse incest act, right? And the Supreme Court ruled that the parody advertisement, while false, could not allow Falwell to win damages for emotional distress because the statement was so obviously ridiculous that it was clearly not true. An allegation believed by nobody, it was ruled, brought no liability upon the author.
I agree with that.
If it's so farcical.
I mean, it was a joke. And it was, I mean, it might have been a very poor taste, but it was still a joke. It wasn't meant to be serious anyway.
So you agree with the 1988 opinion?
I think that it's enough to have Jerry Falwell very angry, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was, that he was libeled, slandered.
Sure. So another thing that I would really like to address is like this thing called libel shopping or libel surfing. So the United States is very protective of its speech. That's something that we really care about here in the United States. But, so in order to prohibit people from coming into the United States and getting our speech prosecuted and held liable for things that were said outside of the country, we honor a ton of foreign judgments, right? Let's just say there's a foreign judgment for murder, right? Or a foreign judgment for $1 million on a different kind of case. Well, that foreign judgment can come into the United States, and our courts will enforce a lot of foreign judgments, right? It's like a cohesiveness that we talk about, like with NATO, UN. It's a cohesiveness, so we honor that things. But we don't allow for forum shopping in this case of libel because other countries think that libel exists a lot more often than we do. We are open to speech, and I want y'all all to think about that in the context of that Washington Post article that I read all the way through, pretty much, right? It's a pretty limited article. Remember what we believe as Americans and what we think we can say. Remember the Falwell opinion, and remember New York Times v. Sullivan. Those are big, big opinions that shape how the law affects us in day to day and what we can say and what we can't say. And when you're thinking about these things, think not only about Amber Heard and her opinion and whether that could be defamatory, right? And remember that truth is a defense. But also think of our journalists that are out there writing for the Sun Herald right now, today, within the constructs that were created by our Supreme Court jurisprudence. It's very interesting to me, and I hope it's interesting to you. And we'll catch you next time on Law Focus.
Truth is a defense.
Truth is the ultimate defense.
The ultimate defense, yeah.
That's it.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
That's the truth.
That's the truth.
Nice to see you, Edward.
Nice to see you, Nathan. Okay, thank you for being with us on this edition of Law Focus, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.